Good morning, everyone. Oh, wow, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for all coming and putting your attention here at the podium. My name is Monica Munaretto, and I am so excited to be here today. I am the new manager of graduate student life at Western. It's a new role, so like many of you, I am new to Western. A lot of you are returning back to campus after having other graduate experiences here or undergraduate experiences, but I know many of you, it is your first day on campus. So to you, I give a very special welcome. I also want to welcome you to this spectacular collaborative event. This is brought to you today by the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies and Student Experiences Support and Engagement, with strong support as well from the Society of Graduate Students and Western Athletics and Recreation. We are all dedicated to helping you succeed during your graduate studies here at Western. Each of us is so happy to see you here today. I'd like to begin our gathering by acknowledging that Western University is located on the lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, Attawandaron peoples, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. The land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous communities, which we recognize vital aspects of our shared history and future. And the beauty of a land acknowledgement can be strengthened when we take a moment to reflect on what it means to us personally, each and every one of us. I'd like to share with you my personal commitment to learning more about our shared history, but also the pre-contact history of Indigenous peoples. And I'm learning more every day about how to best serve our Indigenous student community here at Western. I encourage you to take a moment to think about how the land acknowledgement affects you personally. Thank you. We have a series of guests joining us today from across campus. Nearly 100 members of our community, whether staff, volunteers, faculty members, have really contributed to bring this event together. That's a sign of how important your graduate student experience is to us. We'll be using the information that you provided in registration, those fantastic questions, to develop our programming as the year rolls through. In today's events, we're going to have a number of panels and opportunities for you to have those questions answered. And feel free to mingle during our resource fair with service providers who can answer any of those questions we don't get to during our panels. Today's event is going to be live streamed, so I want to send a special thank you and welcome to those of you who are joining us online. In addition, if you have to leave, you can catch the video recording through our websites. We'll send you the link in the coming days. Our first guest today is Dr. Alan Shepard. Professor Shepard is the 11th President and Vice Chancellor of Western University. He arrived at Western in July of 2019, and he has also held important positions at Concordia and at Ryerson, in addition to a number of other leadership roles at Canadian and American institutions. So, as our first speaker, I would like to welcome our President, Dr. Shepard.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear in the back? Is it okay? Good. So you know when the flight attendant says, welcome to Rome, or welcome, and they just got there just like you did? That's how I am this morning. I just got to Western, and I'm saying, welcome to Western. Some of you have come from other countries, from far away. I also am an immigrant to Canada. I came here in 2002, and it's been a life-changing decision for me, a great decision. And however you got here, we're glad to have you. You're coming to one of the strongest universities in Canada. And the academic programs that we offered here are unparalleled in their excellence, in their opportunities for you as graduate students to conduct leading edge research. And for some of you also to work on your teaching skills as time goes on. I'll just say that as a graduate student, my own experience got a lot better once I started engaging in some of the other opportunities outside of my program. I had a great friend named Ann McMaster who said to me one day, "You are such a couch potato. You need to get off the sofa. Meet me at the gym. We're going to go running." I'd never been running in my life. So I'll just say that getting some exercise, joining a social club, going to see some movies, and not being in the lab or the classroom or your office or the library 24 hours a day is a good thing. The other advice I would give is get enough sleep and eat your vegetables. I'm serious. There'll be time for ice cream later. I just wanted to say again, we're glad you've chosen Western for your graduate education. It's a profound moment in your lives. I think you'll always remember this day. And since you're here for orientation, you can give yourself an A+. For all the students who are starting today who are not here, they don't get an A+. So good for you. Welcome to Western. I hope you can take advantage of everything the university has to offer and that you make a contribution to this community as well. All the best to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Shepherd. He's off to another event. It's a very busy week. I would now like to introduce Myrna Kiknosway to the podium. As a visiting elder with the Indigenous Student Center, Myrna assists students and staff in the areas of cultural awareness, consultation, and counseling. Myrna will now share words of welcome and an opening prayer. Welcome, Myrna.
Oh, Minukashababan. That's good morning. Wanabashun in the way Makanaduk, Ishkote Makasan Kwan Dishnakas, Mondo them, Bakajanon and Dunjaba, Budawadami Odao and Nishnabi Kwanda, Niswi Madavian. With that, my Shagnashi knows one is Myrna Kiknosway, but my real name in my language is Fire Moccasin Woman, and I'm from the Loon clan. My parents, my father is Budawadami, which is, you may hear it as Potawatomi, and he's the Loon clan. My mother is from the Odawa Nation, and she's a Jajak, and that's Crane clan. So my lifetime has been, and this is all new to me because my mother went to residential school. My dad didn't go. And there was a time in our history, and I'm really glad this young woman said pre-contact, because there was a time in history when our people decided to go silent to protect the children. So that's part of the discovery that I hope you entertain in this next period of time of your life. And with that, I want to open with a prayer, because in my way, that's the way we begin each day. So I ask you to please sit with your feet flat on the floor. And I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to breathe. I enjoyed the president talking about what you need to do, and breathing is very important. In the kind of work that I do with people, breathing is so important because we acknowledge and we accept that it's the Spirit, no matter which way you believe about the Spirit, but that's where your life breath came from. And when it's time, the Spirit will take back that breath. So while you are here on this earth plane, you learn how to breathe again. Okay, so just close your eyes and continue breathing, your feet flat on the floor. And why I'm asking you to do that is even though you may be sitting in a chair and you've got your feet on the bottom of the floor in front of you, you are still connected to the earth. So as you do that, I will open this way. Ah, bajuma shomas. Ishkote makasan kwandishnakas mondo dem. Bakajanon dunjaba. Budawadami odao and Nishnabi kwanda. Niswi Madavian. Chimikwech kajanado for this most beautiful day, for this most wonderful life. Chimikwech for all that you have given us, from the sky world to the earth plane to the underground, to all of the four directions. Waban, wabanang, nokam sag mashomsag. Jawan, jawanang, nokam sag mashomsag. Gabya and Gabya nang nokumisak mishomsak. Kiwaden nang nokumisak mishomsak. Gisus, which is the sun that travels across the sky. The Ba Gisus nokumis is the one that travels through the sky during the night. And Shkagamakwa, a key, the earth. I say Chimigwech to you. Chimigwech for all colors of man, the yellow, the red, the black, and the white. Chimigwech for giving us this most precious time in our life to be here all together, so that we can learn and grow and become as one people, which we know that the earth depends on all of us for its survival and moving into the future. I say Chimigwech to you, and don't hesitate at any time to ask for help. Open up your heart, your mind, and your spirit to your life from this day forward. Chimigwech, Nikanagana.
Wonderful. The next thing that I want to talk about briefly is the order of how today's events will go. So we will be hosting a number of welcomes from people who are well connected to campus and experts in our field. Following this morning's welcomes, we are going to have a panel discussion with a number of our colleagues across campus providing answers. We have a resource fair at lunch, and then we'll be providing refreshments. In the afternoon, we'll reconvene for a second panel with a different group of experts on campus, answering new questions from those you've given us online, and we will close with a number of short presentations about additional services and introduce you to some other key people on campus that will help make your graduate experience spectacular. I would now like to welcome Dr. Margaret McGlynn. She's the Associate Vice Provost from the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. First of all, like everybody else, I'm delighted to welcome you here to Western. As with, it seems like everybody else, I too am new to the job, so we're all going to be learning stuff together. I'm struck, I don't know, as the President mentioned, I know some of you have been here before. If you graduated here before, you've probably been in this room, and I'm struck as I look at the stage behind us, hidden behind the curtain. It's where convocation happens. And so a year from now or a few years from now, hopefully all of you will be crossing that stage getting your degrees. And I hope when that moment comes, you'll kind of pause and reflect and think about how much has happened between this day and that day. Many of you are familiar with us and with our campus, but for those of you who aren't, I'm just going to say a couple of things about Western. We're an old university by North American standards. We were founded in 1878, and we've been here on this space since 1916. We have 11 faculties, so you will get to know your own pretty well, but take some time to maybe to learn a little bit at the others. And we also have 3 affiliated university colleges that are kind of on the edge of our campus. You're joining a large population. There are almost 40,000 students here at Western, about 6,000 graduate students. Everything that we have is housed on this beautiful campus, and I hope you'll take the time to get to know it physically. We've got a river running through the campus, we've got beautiful walking trails, we've got all sorts of interesting activities on campus, as well as the things that you will be required to do. So please do explore all of the other things too. We're also, as you know, a top-ranked research university. That's why you came here. And graduate students are a key part of our identity. You matter a lot to us. We offer all sorts of programs: graduate diplomas, professional masters, thesis-based masters, professional doctorates, and dissertation-based doctorates. So I know some of you are here for a short period of time for a fairly focused reason. Other of you are starting on a longer and more winding journey, but I hope all of you will find what you need. About you guys, well, I know that you come from all across the country and all across the world. About 20% of our graduate population comes from outside of Canada, and we're very proud of that. And I also know that you bring a wide variety of life experiences when you come here. Some of you I know have come direct through bachelor's programs or through master's programs. Others have taken a more scenic journey to get here, and you bring all sorts of interesting experiences with you. But we know that you all bring knowledge and excitement and hopefully a burning desire to learn, and that's part of why you're so important to us. I know the beginning of graduate school can be a time of great excitement, but it can also be a time of maybe some anxiety, some questions about whether this is the right choice for you, whether you're going to do well here. And the answer is almost certainly, but it's worth maybe addressing the anxiety a little bit. And I was amused that the president has sort of anticipated me a bit here, because I think there are three main reasons why people don't succeed in graduate school. And it might be worth talking about those for a couple of minutes, just sort of forewarned is forearmed maybe. And I think the first and most important reason why people don't succeed is you don't maintain a healthy balance in life, right? And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about probably the only thing I remember from my own graduate orientation, which was a long time ago, was an elderly professor telling us that the best way to succeed in graduate school was to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and that we would get all our work done and then we would have time left over. And we looked at him in horror when if we wanted to work 9 to 5, we wouldn't be in graduate school. That's not the point, right? Part of the joy of graduate school is the flexibility you have to do things on your own time and in your own way. So in some ways it was terrible advice because none of us took it. But there was a core of good advice in there, which is thinking about the balance in your life. And I think there's a really useful mantra for part of the 8-hour workday campaign from like a century ago, which is the idea that you should have 8 hours sleep, 8 hours work, 8 hours to do what you will, right? 8 hours sleep, you can do nothing without it, or at least you can do nothing well without it. So that should be your priority. 8 hours work, that should be easy because we're here because we love what we do. But the 8 hours to do what we will, that's what makes all the rest of it work. Whether that's friends, family, exercise, stamp collecting, spelunking, lying on the hill outside UC, watching the clouds go by, all of those things make the other things work. So 8, 8, and 8 is a pretty good way to think about your life, however you organize those 8s. And I think that's a really important thing of keeping balance. These days you can work when you want, you can work where you want, you can pretty much work how you want. But remember to stop work and do other things. Be mindful of that. I think the second reason people struggle sometimes in graduate school is you don't ask enough questions. We expect you to succeed. We wouldn't have brought you here if we didn't. And we will push you hard, because that's what graduate school is about. We will ask you to do things you've never done before. Sometimes we'll ask you to do things you'll never do again, which is one of the oddities of graduate school. And so it makes sense to ask why, sometimes. Certainly how or what. Ask questions. Don't wonder, don't worry, ask. And there are lots of people to ask. You can ask your supervisor, you can ask your grad chair, you can ask your grad advisor, you can ask your department chair, you can ask your associate dean, or you can ask anybody at SGPS. We all have a vested interest in your success. We all want you to do well. We will all have answers to your questions, and I can guarantee you we would rather answer 100 questions than solve a single problem. So ask. Because you've come here from so many places, from so many experiences, from so many backgrounds, you'll all find different things easy, different things hard, different things straightforward, different things confusing. Ask. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And then the third reason why people struggle sometimes in grad school is because it isn't the right place for you. And I put that on the table. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But sometimes people feel like maybe I'm in the wrong place, and they're not. They're in absolutely the right place. But because they haven't taken care of number one, they don't have life-work balance, or because they haven't asked the right questions, it doesn't feel right. So deal with those things first. But when you get here, you will open yourself up to new experiences, to new skills, to new knowledge, and sometimes you realize, I'd rather be somewhere else. I'd rather be doing something else. And if that's what happens, that's fine. This is a step on your journey. We hope it's an important step. We hope it's a productive step. We hope it's a step that you'll really enjoy. But it's your journey, and you're the ones who decide where you go next and how you want to get there. We're just here to help. So I hope in a few years' time I'll see you on that stage. I hope I'll get a chance to say congratulations to each and every one of you, and I hope that you have an awesome journey. Thank you.
Hello again. I can say from experience that that was fantastic advice. I myself am a graduate student. I'm doing my PhD exploring graduate student success. I thought if I was going to be successful in graduate school, I should pick a topic that will help facilitate that. Definitely, the one thing I would say as well to follow up with regards to tips and advice, I'm clearly not a terribly shy person. However, when I started my first graduate work, I went across the country and started at a very large university. And even though I was well connected in my undergrad, I did experience kind of strange feelings of loneliness or trying to figure out outside the classroom, where really did I fit in? And so I love to tell the story to people about how as a graduate student, I went to a new campus and I reached out to the people who were involved in providing services, campus events, athletics, different outlets on campus such as restaurants, and started to become engaged. And so when people ask me about my previous universities, often they're surprised when I say, oh, I did a master's degree there. And they say, but it sounds like you were an undergraduate because you were so involved. Getting involved is for everyone. And if you find a moment where you say, I'm not feeling as though I'm connecting, come and find the people who are dedicated to the graduate student experience. Find Dr. McGlynn. Speak to me in the Student Experience office. Connect with our colleagues in the Department of Athletics and Rec. We are so excited that you're here, but really excited to grow with you. I'll now invite our panelists to take their seats. This group works directly with our graduate students on a regular basis. So they'll be sharing with us fantastic information about how to be successful inside the classroom and out. We've been sitting for a brief moment, so let me get a little bit of blood flow while they set up. Is anyone here a graduate student? Thank you. Put up one hand if you're a grad student if you choose, and a second hand if you're at Western right now. There we go. Thank you. The last question is, did any of you arrive today with hopes, dreams, or questions about graduate student life? Raise your hand. So far, I can say everything is going well. I'd like to turn the microphone and attention, if I may, over to Mark Wolf. He joins us as well from, I always want to make sure I don't mess up my sentences, Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Monica. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark Wolf. I'm the Communication Manager in the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. So over your time here, you're going to hear SGPS about 1 billion times, and that's what the acronym stands for. You also hear SOGS too, right, Gina? I just want to say this is the second year that we're doing a panel discussion. Last year was the first year, and it went really well because it is driven by all of you. When you registered, you submitted your questions, and we read all of them, and there were literally hundreds and hundreds in excesses of thousands. And we saw some themes, and we hope we touch on a number of those things today that you generated, and we hope it's a lively discussion amongst the panel, and you enjoy this for the next hour. There'll be a second panel this afternoon for another hour as well, so we'll welcome you back for that. So I'm going to take a seat here. I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we'll get started with the questions. Check. Good. Okay. We'll start from left to right. Our first panelist is Gina Coombe. She is the president of SOGS, another acronym that stands for the Society of Graduate Students. She is also one of you, a PhD candidate in the Department of Pathology. Next is Ryan Mackay. He is a counselor with Learning, Development, and Success. Next to Ryan in the center of our table is Paul Schmidt. He is the Associate Director with the Writing Support Center here on campus. Next to Paul, you've met Margaret McGlynn, who is Associate Vice Provost with SGPS and also Professor and Associate Dean, Faculty and Operations with the Faculty of Social Science. And on the end, on the far right, is Ron Wagler, and he is the Director of Administration with the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. So please welcome our volunteer panelists today. Okay, we have a number of questions here. It's hard to know where to put the stick in the stream, so I think being an employee of the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies, we're going to start on the far right with Ron Wagler. Ron, what is the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies, and what does this unit do? And again, I'm talking as a student, when should I engage with them?
Thank you, Mark. Excellent question. Last year, we started out by talking about how much snow there's going to be in London. And that seemed to be a more fun and interesting topic than talking about SGPS. But the School of Graduate Postdoctoral Studies, we look after and we advocate for all graduate students and postdoctoral scholars at Western. So the entire time you're here, you are going to be registered within the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. When would you engage with us? Any matters of registration, thesis examination, anytime you're looking for external funding, whether that be provincial funding or federal funding, you would engage with the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. And as well, you would also be engaged with your graduate program. And maybe Margaret can add a little bit more too here.
Yeah, most of you will not necessarily have a lot to do with SGPS, and that's kind of the interesting thing about it. You will be housed in your departments, you will get to know your departments, and much of your administrative stuff will happen through your grad chair, and if not through your grad chair, then through your associate dean in the faculties. But SGPS will always be there in the background. You are registered there. We do have care for you. We do manage a lot of the sort of programs and policies that you are part of. But you don't necessarily know that we exist or need to know that we exist until you want us or need us. And when you want us or need us, we will be there for you.
Okay, thank you. That's some good administrative background. I kind of want to jump off, Margaret, based on what you were saying in your opening remarks about structuring your day. We have a question from our students here, which I'll put to you, Ryan. How does a successful graduate student tend to structure their average day? I think this question from the student is framed particularly in terms of if we think about that 8-hour work chunk.
Yeah.
How much time do they spend reading, running experiments, doing TA work, and doing the work of a graduate student? I'll put that to you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly a question I speak to a lot with graduate students. So the structure to that 8-hour span of time during the day is, of course, going to depend on your program of study and where, where you're starting from, whether it be a master's or doctoral degree. The important thing, though, to consider is to actually have a structure, to create a routine for yourself that will allow you to get the things done that you need to get. So initially in graduate work, coursework is where most students start, and a bulk of your time will be spent related, of course, to completing coursework. And then, say for a master's student in their second year, that will shift over into some more research, some more independent work. So things ebb and flow. One of the things that I often recommend to new graduate students is to start maybe over the next month doing a time audit on yourself. Where do you spend your time? Where are you noticing, you are putting a lot of energy and effort into what activities? And then that can help you sort of frame a structure for yourself that is sort of working for you. You might also notice some things that you're neglecting, or maybe some areas you're spending a little bit too much time. And then it really helps you to sort of become quite aware of where your time is going and how to create, an effective, productive routine that's going to work for you. But secondly is you're also sort of considering, well, what are my long-term goals? Where do I need to be in 4 months, in 6 months, in 12 months, in 2 years, in 4 years? And how it is that your structure you start to create for yourself now helps you to accomplish some of those longer-term goals.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. Let's think a little broader now. Gina, I'll put this question to you. A student has asked, how can I make the most of my experience in graduate school? How do I get involved and meet people? And I think now we're talking about more of that holistic 888 structure that Margaret was referring to.
Hello? Okay. So I would encourage everybody to think about three things, broken down into research, professional development, and really trying to build a sense of community. So under research, I would recommend that you aim to present at least at one conference to just share some of your research findings. At SOGS, we actually offer a platform where you can share your research with other graduate students on this campus, and it's called the Western Research Forum, hosted annually in March. It's where you get to talk about your research with people outside of your field, so it's a great experience. I encourage you to participate. For professional development, why not participate in the Own Your Future program hosted by SGPS? They have amazing workshops, so I encourage you to participate. In terms of sense of community, you should attend your departmental and SOGS events. SOGS also has various committees you can join to get involved and to meet new people. So really just don't be afraid to explore stuff on and off campus. Put yourself out there for not just research and academic growth, but really for your personal and professional development. Again, work-life balance is important, so go out and explore.
Excellent, thank you, Gina. A question for Margaret now. A student asked, what advice would you give me as to how to care for my mental and physical health while still having time for my graduate responsibilities and personal life? And this seems to be, in my experience, especially in the last 10 years, increasingly on the radar of universities across Canada and increasingly important.
I think the president's advice was good advice. I think sleep is a really important thing for your mental and physical health. You guys are young, most of you, and so you probably think you can live without a lot of sleep, and because you're young, you probably can, but not getting enough sleep makes everything else harder. And so it's just an easy thing to do to make your life better. So that's just a basic thing I would add. I agree with everything that the panelists have said, but one of the things to kind of put into all of that is that for many of us, if you're at graduate school, you're here because you love what you do. And one of the reasons I'm pushing that 8-8-8 model is I think it's really easy for us to end up with 16 hours of half work, right? Because especially if you're not from London, your immediate community is going to be other grad students in your program. And so it's going to be very easy for even your social life to be talking about work, right? It's going to be very easy for you to spend much of your waking hours thinking about, talking about, worrying about, wondering about, procrastinating about work, and then some time working. And so I think a key part of your mental and physical health is being mindful of that. It's fine, to go to the grad club for lunch with your office mates or your lab mates or your classmates and chat about the class you've just come from or the lab you've just come from. That's a natural and integral part of grad work. But if then you spend the next 4 hours in the grad club chatting about or complaining about or procrastinating about work, and then you go home and you chat to your roommates about work, right? It becomes everything. And so I think one of the key things for your mental and your physical health is to work and then stop working. And to recognize when you're working and when you're thinking about work and when you're complaining about work. And to sort of be mindful of all of those various things so that you have other things, right? To get away from work, off campus, talk to people who are ideally not graduate students at all, but at least not graduate students in your department. So that you develop and you contemplate and you worry about and you dream about and you hope for other things than work. That would be my number one recommendation.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, let's talk about the work. Question for Paul. Actually, I'm just curious, how many of you behind me are in a thesis-based master's or doctoral program? Can I just see a show of hands? How many, keep your hands up, how many are also or might be doing a major research project, paper? Writing is critical, okay. So to that point, Paul, what advice can you give about thesis writing and where can we go to get help?
Thank you very much, Margaret. The best advice I would give you is to remember you do not write in a social vacuum. You're writing for other human beings. And as you progress up that scholarly ladder, there's a tendency to become more cocooned in that environment, and we sometimes struggle disseminating our information to people who may not understand the information. So I would argue you should write to persuade, not merely inform. I read a lot of thesis introductions, and I want to know why this research is relevant. Not just relevant to you, but why is it relevant to me? So think of it in terms of selling. Sell your research. Write that introduction a bit more like a grant proposal. Sell, sell, sell. And figure out who is your audience. So I will ask you, who is your audience? Your supervisor, correct? Yes, but your primary audience should be that external reviewer. Because your supervisor may share your passion, your supervisor may understand what you are trying to accomplish, and your supervisor may understand the terminology that you are using. But that doesn't mean the external reviewer will. So write for that individual, because that person is not going to read your work and think, oh, I'm unintelligent, I must read more. No, they're going to blame you as the messenger. So think of that key audience member when you are writing. Also remember that you do not have to be the love child of Noam Chomsky and J.K. Rowling when you write. You don't always have to be brilliant. Sometimes you have to put the words on the page because you cannot edit a blank page. And one word of advice I would give you is write without your research. Sometimes we use research as a crutch, and we constantly look at our research and do more research, and we go down that rabbit hole, and we forget to actually write. So write without that research in front of you, and you will also discover that you have voice. You have signature. You can be an author, and you will project that voice in your writing more when you're not relying on that crutch of research. Of course, you have to go back and fill in the gaps with the research, but you will write a lot more when you're not constantly looking at your research and then writing a few sentences.
And second part of that question too, Paul, that's great advice on actually writing the thesis. If the people are having difficulty, where can they?
Oh yeah, the most important part, come to the Writing Support Center. Yes. We can help you with your writing. Think of us as that external reviewer. And say you want to get into this esteemed journal, we can help you. I love working with grant proposals too. That's my favorite thing to do. So come see me with your grant proposal. We know what we're talking about. Most of the people who work there are faculty members or were previously faculty members. So please come and see us.
Excellent. See, there's a sell for you. Okay, in that regard, Gina, let's talk about imposter syndrome. How do you handle imposter syndrome? And the question also includes, first of all, what is it, and how do you handle it?
So, in short, the imposter syndrome is the feeling of doubt in your accomplishment and this constant fear of being exposed as a fraud. There's been numerous research on this topic, but I think we can all recognize that everyone feels this way in one shape or another. But it's really important to remind yourselves, and I want to take this time to say that you got accepted into graduate school. You actually belong here. Congratulations. We're definitely going to be experiencing ups and downs throughout the duration of our graduate education. But at any point, if you're feeling down, I really encourage you to reach out to your support network. Don't be a lonely island at graduate school.
Thank you, Gina. Let's go back into more of the administrative academic realm here. Ron, I'll put this question to you. How can I become a teaching assistant or a research assistant? And many thousands of you in this room will be working as one or both of those roles.
Okay, I'll just put the question out there. How many of you do you expect to hold a graduate teaching assistantship in the next year or two? Okay, so the vast majority. So when it comes to graduate teaching assistant opportunities, your graduate program, as part of your funding package, will hire you and appoint you and offer you an offer of employment for a GTA. So that's where the vast majority of GTA positions come from. Others of you will be funded through a graduate research fund via your program again. So those are positions generally that are tied to your funding at Western. And then there's thousands of other opportunities to work at Western, whether that be in the library system, campus recreation. So I think, it's been mentioned before, but this notion of getting more involved and getting out there, one of them is finding fun and interesting employment opportunities outside of Western.
Excellent. Thank you, Ron. I think building on that, I've spoken to a number of graduate students in my role that have held teaching assistantships, research assistantships, and they get so much more out of it in terms of professional skills, soft skills, transferable skills, whatever you want to call them. Margaret, I'll put this question to you, kind of building on that. Thinking in kind of the two worlds here, how do I develop my professional skills if I'm a doctoral student, and likewise if I'm a master's student?
The academic program you're in is primarily an academic program, but for as long as master's programs and PhD programs have existed, the people who have taken those degrees, a huge proportion of them have gone on not to be academics. So they have always intrinsically and inherently been professional development programs. That is kind of baked into them. Things like Own Your Future as a program that we have here, and you'll hear more about it later today, are kind of focusing your attention on the ways in which you are learning professional skills as part of those graduate programs. And I encourage you to take advantage of them because they kind of help you to think about them in a very concrete sort of way. But every part of your academic program is going to develop your professional skills. It's going to develop your communication skills, both oral and written. It's going to develop your skills in analysis. It's going to develop your skills in assessment. It's going to develop your time management skills, your project management skills. Those of you who are in professional programs, master's or doctoral, have a very clearly defined set of professional skills that you're going to achieve. But those of you that are in the more traditional research programs are going to be developing professional skills every bit as much. Sometimes it's going to be implicit, but we are getting much better about being explicit about what the benefits are. And it's something that you can also do. You can sort of stop and say, why am I doing this? Why is this part of my program? And if it's not clear to you why, ask. And if you don't get a good answer, ask again, because it is developing those skills. And you can hone them further by being conscious of it, but it's happening all the time.
Great, thank you, Margaret. Next question I'll put to you, Ryan. What are the key resources available on campus or in the community for studying and researching and that kind of thing?
Sure. Well, we heard from Paul here just a few moments ago in terms of a key resource. What I will also say is I think sometimes in research and scholarship we get comfortable maybe sitting behind our laptops or computers, and that's where sort of a lot of the research starts, continues, and ends. But really get familiar with the libraries here on campus. There are some amazing staff in our libraries here, and specifically some of the subject-specific librarians, so depending on your topics of research, to really connect with those individuals who can provide additional support and resources in your scholarship and work. And additionally, in learning development and success, of which I am part of that team, we support students sort of organizing their research projects, how to implement a structure that can allow for them to achieve their goals week to week, month to month. One of the comments that was discussed earlier was sort of the notion about seeking balance and how you sort of work in a way that helps to reduce stress. One of the things about being able to have a routine around some of the goals that you want to accomplish, and when you're able to consider that in the long-term context, you can kind of gain a sense of reassurance by that. When I speak to graduate students a lot who are really stressed out and struggling, they're not sure sometimes what they should be doing right now, what they should be working on, what is the most important thing. They're asking me often, what do you see as the most important thing I should be working on? So that can help to restore a sense of sort of balance and feeling more assured about about what's going on. But I think there are a number of key resources here on campus for students in terms of their study and research. You're going to hear about a lot today. So, you know, someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Monica, ask a lot of questions, be informed about those resources that can support you in your time at Western.
Thank you. Let's kind of stay in that vein. Question for Paul, you talking about thesis writing and all the best advice in your Writing Support Center as a great hub. I'm a student. How do I know if I'm writing well enough and if my writing's up to par? You know, you were talking about writing for the sake of writing, not connected to your research. And then the second part of that is, how do I know when I should reach out for help if I'm not up to that standard?
Well, I would echo what Gina said. You are here for a reason, so someone has deemed your writing worthy. But sometimes it can be difficult. I remember my first year doing my master's. In my first course, the professor lauded me as a terrific writer. Then my second course, my professor lauded me as a terrific writer. My third course, same thing. My fourth course, I was given a 70 and told that I couldn't write at the graduate level. Thankfully, I had my fourth professor fourth and not first, because that would have played with my head. But I knew I was a good writer. I felt that conviction, and she could not sway me. Now, what had happened was my previous professors were all from arts programs, as was I. My fourth professor was from sociology. And there are some wonderful, wonderful writers in sociology. She just happened to not be one of them. But I did have that conviction, and sometimes it is difficult. So I would argue, be proactive. Come to the Writing Support Center, and we can have a frank discussion about your writing. We see people who are phenomenal writers, and we see people who do need improvement. But trust yourselves. Trust yourselves. If you feel that you are not confident as a writer, then perhaps the feedback you are getting that is extremely negative has merit. So be proactive, seek help right at the beginning, and we can help you.
Thank you, Paul. Margaret, I'll put this question to you. I think this is a great question. What are the major differences between undergraduate and graduate study?
I think the single biggest difference between undergraduate and graduate study is that you have to take a lot more control of what you're going to be doing at the graduate level. There's much more choice, there's much more focus on the kinds of work that you're doing. And I think the big difference is that all of the people in your classes or in your labs were also the best students in undergrad. So the people who weren't the best students in undergrad aren't there anymore. So things will move faster because they can move faster. Those, I think, are the sort of the academic big differences. And as I think somebody said, whether you're starting a master's program or PhD program, odds are most of you are going to start off by doing coursework. And so in many ways, the structure will be kind of familiar. It will feel kind of similar. It's just picked up pace, gotten a little bit more intense, gotten a little bit more focused, and hopefully as a result gotten more interesting because you're doing more exactly what you wanted to be doing than you were as an undergrad. The other big difference, I think, and it's going to happen a little while from now, but it's worth mentioning because it's one of the awkward transition periods for people, is if you're in a program which is going to switch from being coursework to being about thesis writing, particularly, or even if it's going to be a major research paper, the big transition doesn't come when you start graduate school. That's an intensification. The big transition comes when coursework ends and you go into writing, because the structure of coursework kind of falls away. The natural community of coursework kind of falls away. If you're in a lab discipline, it's a little bit easier because that maintains a sense of community. You're always going to be working with people. But if you're in a less collaborative discipline, that can be when the big transition comes. And that's when the key difference between graduate work and undergraduate work really becomes clear, and that is the need for you to motivate yourself and to organize yourself and to develop your community yourself, because the natural structures of undergrad won't be there anymore. So that's not going to happen for a while, and that's part of why this early part of coursework, graduate coursework, allows you to build those structures so they're there when you need them in a year's time, or 18 months' time, or whenever that time comes, that you will have those things there ready to go, that you will have developed the habits of structuring time, of building community, so that you've got something ready to slide right into when that transition comes.
Thank you, Margaret. Any other panelists? Would they want to add anything to that, difference between undergrad and grad?
I would say one major difference in grad school is you're expected to create new knowledge. As an undergraduate student, there's a tendency to regurgitate what others have said. You have to amalgamate that information through your specific lens and create something new. So that can be a difficult part of the process.
Gina, as a current PhD student too, what are some of the key differences you experienced from being an undergraduate student to the graduate world?
A lot of the things that were mentioned, completely agree with. I think one additional thing is that as graduate students, sometimes we're wearing multiple hats during the course of our program. You know, you're a graduate student, but you might also be TA, you might also be doing research assistantship on the side. So yeah, I think TAing is another big part of your graduate program. Now you are responsible for the undergraduate education in some of your tutorials and classes. So yeah, undergrads are going to be looking up to you. So that's another difference between undergrad and grad.
Thank you very much. And I'll keep you on the mic here too. We'll kind of move away from the academic world now and go more into the kind of cultural, social world. So are there any traditions here on Western's campus that we should know about?
So for Western grad specific traditions, a lot of these things happen at the grad club. So can I just get a show of hands who knows about the grad club? Awesome, okay. So for those of you that may be a little bit unfamiliar with the grad club, it's our campus eatery, pub. It's really our graduate student space, so take advantage of it. And the two things that I want to highlight regarding the tradition is one, trivia night on Tuesdays, so come out. And two, you have to drink from the goblet of knowledge after you successfully defend your thesis. And I know that this is, you know, a few years from now, but don't forget, it is the Western grad tradition, so please celebrate your big day at the grad club.
Thank you, Gina. You were citing the difference in undergrad and grad as teaching assistant, research assistant, obviously. So, Ron, I'll put the next question to you. We know how to become a TA or an RA. What are the responsibilities of a TA or an RA, and how many hours do you work? How do you track them? Give me some details about that.
I get all the boring questions. I just want to say, the guy in the purple shirt here, he was a little too keen to answer that question about the grad club. Okay? Clearly he's been there. Yes, back to the question at hand. So, a teaching assistant at Western, you know, generally you're helping a professor teach a course. So you're involved in course setup, you're involved in helping in the labs, you're involved in grading essays, exams, quizzes, you're keeping office hours, you're responding to questions. You know, this is where we get into the rules. So there is a collective agreement between the university and the graduate teaching assistants, and that's with the Public Service Alliance of Canada. And the president, Ari, will be speaking a little bit later on about the relationship as well. And in this case, you work on average 10 hours a week when you're a graduate teaching assistant. And it can vary, of course, depending on the time of year and the responsibilities. Each program has their own structure on recording hours. But obviously it's best in your best interest to keep track of your hours, just so you have a sense of keeping around that 10 hours on average.
Thank you, Ron. Ryan, I'll put this question to you. Can you identify a campus resource aside from your own unit that students might not be aware of that you believe is essential to their success while here?
Paul wants me to say the Writing Support Center, but there are a number. And after today, I mean, you will be exposed to a number of those services. However, if you're finding yourself needing some support for whatever reason that may be, but you're just not sure yet who the best person or individuals you should seek support from, visit the Wellness Education Center. It is their purpose. They exist to help all Western students, graduate students, get to the places that they need to be. So that's something to just remember and to consider. Find out where the WEC is, or Wellness Education Center. It really is the hub and referral point of pointing students to directions of supports that they may really benefit from engaging with.
Thank you, Ryan.
And the Writing Support Center.
Thank you, Ryan.
And just a heads up too, so all the services that are cited here today, you can find on the web. You're probably familiar with grad.uwo.ca as opposed to just uwo.ca. uwo.ca is the university main campus website, obviously. If you go to grad.uwo.ca, that's the website hosted by the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. All the resources from the Writing Support Center, Learning Development, Society of Graduate Students, everything you want to know administratively, funding, everything is there. So, you know, if you come away with one thing from this epic orientation, go to our website and you'll find everything you need. Okay, Paul, I want to put this to you. You were citing what I would describe as a not so positive experience with the sociology prof. Speaking as a graduate student, on behalf of all the graduate students behind me, how can I develop positive relationships with faculty? This is very specific, in the hope that they can later act as references, whether employer, character, or academic references. And I think it almost starts with how can I develop positive relationships with faculty in the now, looking to that end point of wanting good references.
Sure. How many of you watch BBC World? The nature shows, narrated by Richard Attenborough. My son is obsessed with these programs, and he wonders why I don't share the same obsession. So Richard Attenborough will talk about a butterfly for a long time, or he'll talk about grasses and how they are growing. And my son will kick me because I'm starting to nod off. He cannot understand, again, why I'm not interested. I'm looking out at the audience and I'm thinking there are a few of you who look like they've seen a marathon of BBC World. And I'm thinking, would I want to supervise those individuals? I'm looking at that individual right there as a positive. I would like to supervise you, or at least I did until you got your cell phone out. So what I would argue is your supervisors are researchers, but they're also educators, and they want to know that you share the same passion. So be passionate, be engaged, listen to what these people say. Make some corrections to your thesis. It's the worst thing as an educator when someone helps you, makes corrections for you, or helps you with that process, and you don't make change. We want to see you make change from chapter to chapter. So be engaged and worry less about the reference. That will take care of itself. People care more about the contribution you make to the field rather than your squash game. Right? So make sure that you are contributing and you are engaged.
Thank you, Paul. And just as a factual note, Richard Attenborough, it's actually his brother David Attenborough that narrates BBC.
No, Richard does a few of them.
He does, really?
He does.
Richard,
Yep,
the dead
he does
Richard
do a few of
Attenborough?
them. Yes, he does.
Okay, now I have
Yep.
to watch BBC World. Point.
Yes, he does.
1 point for you.
I have seen them all.
Let's kind of build on that too. Margaret, we have a good question here. How supportive is the academic environment at Western? You know, you've been around many universities. You know the culture in North America. How do we compare to other schools? And let's talk about Western.
The atmosphere here, I think, is very, very supportive. In some ways, it's an easy question to answer. As I said earlier, there's lots of us around who have a vested interest in helping you. It's a supportive atmosphere academically, and it's a supportive atmosphere, I think, more generally socially. There are lots of people who can help with. Those of you who were at the TA day yesterday heard me say there are lots of people who, any experience you will have had in the classroom, other people will have had, and they can help you. And the same is true of most of your graduate work. Even when something feels like it's unique to you, and in some ways it is, some version of it has happened before, and there are ways to help you and to move you forward. I kind of in some ways want to come back to Paul's answer to tie into that, and this question of supportiveness and relationship with supervisors and reference letters and all of those other kinds of things. Your relationship, and I'm finding it in some ways interesting that we haven't talked about supervisors yet, because supervisors are often a very important part of graduate life. And your relationship with your supervisor is going to be a really important one, those of you who have supervisors, particularly when you're doing dissertations. And it's one that's worth thinking about for a moment, because your supervisor, in some ways, their role will be to evaluate your work, but their role is also to support your work. And I think it's very easy to get hung up on the evaluation part, that you only want to give your supervisor something that's perfect, something that's done, something that's impressive, because you want to impress them. And sure, you do. But often you have to learn stuff in order to impress them. So you want to give them work that's not so great, work that's trying to get there, work that's struggling to reach an end, because part of their role is to help you in that process. Right? Part of that role is to say, okay, I see where you're hung up. What about this? Try it that way. That's a better approach. Have you added this part in? What happens then? They remain your teachers, as well as your supervisors, as well as your evaluators. And so when they come to write a reference letter for you, that letter is not just going to say, this is the most brilliant student I've ever had. That letter is going to talk about why and how your work is good. It's going to come from their knowledge of you. And the better they know you, the better they've seen you work through this stuff, the better that letter will be. Right? That is a huge part of what your support is going to be. Right? If your academic work is going well, much of the other stuff becomes much easier. And your academic work will go well if you let your supervisor and other instructors help you. So don't get hung up on getting it right the first time. We're here to help you get it right the 5th time if need be, because you're doing complicated things and sometimes it takes a while. That's okay.
Thank you, Margaret. Gina, I'll put this question to you, kind of digressing a little bit. Are there any clubs on campus I can join? And by extension, if I want to start my own club, how would I do that?
So unfortunately, there are no officially recognized graduate clubs here at Western, but the Campus Rec Center has clubs that you can join, like intramurals, as graduate students. Also, there have been many cases where graduate students want to start their informal club, so SOGS has been their point of contact to get that communication out. So that's one way that you could start to, or you can start an initiative and trying to create that network of community with other graduate students.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, we'll move back to the administrative realm, Ron. This is specifically a question from a master's student. So, do master's students from Western apply directly for a PhD at Western, and should that be the goal of a master's student?
Yes. I mean, obviously, it's up to you. You know, you're gonna have a certain experience at Western. You're gonna go on from there. There's different ways to advance to the PhD. So one of them is that some disciplines you begin the master's and eventually you transfer into the PhD. In many cases, you finish your master's and you apply directly to the PhD at Western. I think the one thing, and maybe I'll ask Margaret to elaborate on, is that I feel like there was an old school mentality many years ago that said, oh, you should never do more than one degree at a university. And I feel like that entire concept has changed because research is so different and so interesting that you really should, you know, not feel terrible about staying at Western for 1 or 2 degrees.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's a hard question to answer because the answer in some ways is different for everybody. Some people are here for a master's program that will serve their needs exactly. They will leave and they will go away and do wonderful things, and that's fabulous. Some of you are here thinking, maybe I'll go on, maybe I won't. And whichever decision you make, as long as it's the right one for you, it's the right decision. Some of our programs sort of think about their master's and PhD as being related even when they technically are not. And that you may be in one of those programs. In most cases, you still have to apply for the PhD and be accepted, but you can often sort of have a somewhat continuous program through those two things. And certainly in cases like that, it makes absolute sense to stay here and just continue on building on the work that you've already done. For everyone, it's going to be an individual decision. We have wonderful programs here. We have wonderful supervisors. If this is the best place to do the work you want to do, absolutely stay. But sometimes you'll discover a new interest, a new specialization that you didn't know about before, and sometimes somewhere else will be the best place to go to pursue that. That's a decision that you make often in consultation with your current supervisors, because they will know, or they should know, and they should be able to give you good advice either way.
Now, I know it's different for everyone. I just want to kind of build on that. Is there a point in your, like for, speaking maybe on behalf of all the doctoral students in the audience, is there a point in your academic career that you just know you're going to get a doctoral degree? Like, does it occur in your late undergrad, or is it not until, you're in the end of your first year of a 2-year master's program, and then something goes off, and then you decided maybe there's 1,000 different answers, I don't know, but I'll maybe put that out there to anybody on the panel.
I think it happens at different times for different people. I know for me, it was always a sense of, no, I couldn't do that. I was a first-generation university goer, and so when I started university, I had only the vaguest idea what a doctoral degree was or how people got to be profs, and it had never crossed my mind that I could do that. And as the years went by, I kind of slowly went, that looks kind of neat, maybe. But I think also imposter syndrome can play in there, this sense of, do I belong? Could I do that? Could that be for me? I'm not sure. And for some people, there is a kind of a moment, it's just, okay, well, I could do a master's. That'd be okay. I could make it. And as that seems to be going pretty well, then the possibility, well, maybe a doctoral would work. Sometimes it's just encouragement. Someone says, you're really good at this. You should go on. And I don't think we often necessarily say that as often as we should to our students, and so I wish people would do it more. But if it's crossed your mind, if it's something you want to do and you're not sure, if you think you're here for a master's degree and what comes next seems hazy, as with everything else, ask, talk to people. And don't just talk to one because you might get the sociologist. Talk to a whole bunch of people about what your hopes and your dreams and your desires are, and see what kind of feedback you get, and then make your own decision based on that. But yeah, it comes at different times, and sometimes you might wander away, spend 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 years doing other things, and think, oh, there's that itch that I've never quite scratched. I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a PhD because that is the thing for me. It's all good.
Excellent. Gina, what was your experience? I'm just curious, as the student representative, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it's interesting. You can speak as them.
Well, I've been at Western for a very long time. I actually did my undergrad and my master's, and I'm currently doing my PhD here. So yeah, for me, it didn't really kick in until I actually met with my supervisor during my 4th year honors thesis project, and he's been great, supportive, a great mentor, and he was primarily one reason of why I've stayed on, and I've continued my graduate studies with him. So yeah, that's my story.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'll put the next question to you actually on the script, from the script. What health benefits do I have access to as a graduate student? This is important.
Yeah, so apart from some of the resources mentioned, like the Wellness Education Center and health services that's located here on campus, if you have external health plan, like the SOGS Health and Dental Plan, we have the Psychology Network and various paramedical services, including massage therapy and physiotherapy. If you're enrolled in the SOGS Health and Dental Plan, you also get the Rexall exclusive savings card, and that provides you with 10% discount on prescription drugs and 20% discount on regularly priced items.
Thank you very much for that. So Ryan, I'll put this to you as part of the Learning Development and Success unit. What is the most common concern students come to your office for?
That's a hard question. If I can respond to just a couple concerns. I think, one of the challenges for students that we see a lot is, again, just sort of generally getting themselves organized, managing their time. Motivation can become a challenge. Especially when we approach things like academic fatigue or burnout. You've been in your program quite some time. That can be a challenge. And I also think how graduate students personally manage getting feedback on their work. I can certainly remember as a graduate student submitting my first chapter to my supervisor. I thought it was perfect. And I remember getting it back, and my initial thought was, I wonder how many red pens he burned through to edit this, to write down all these suggestions of changes that I need to make. But it was helpful at the time. I was able to talk to someone that was able to help me reframe this, to think, this isn't about me. The feedback isn't about me personally or my intellect. This is about my supervisor helping me, assisting me, providing me guidance in producing the best work possible, producing the new knowledge within the field of my graduate work. So those are some of the challenges. And I think the last thing I would say is sometimes it's hard for graduate students to say no to things, right? There's lots of research projects and so many things going on. We develop a case of FOMO, fear of missing out, sometimes, and we don't say no, we overload and overwhelm ourselves, and we can run into some challenges in those situations. So just a couple things there.
Thank you. Question now for Paul. Speaking as a graduate student, how can I best position myself for a productive and enjoyable graduate experience? A bit of a more holistic question.
Well, I would reiterate what others have said. Ask questions. If you're unsure how to write a lit review, for example, or negotiating different genres, ask your supervisor. As Margaret said, they're there to support you. So ask questions. I remember working with a PhD student not long ago who was struggling with formatting her paper, and she was terrified to talk to her supervisor. And no one on campus seemed to know how to format this paper. She was using some special program. But her supervisor knew, yet she refused to talk to her supervisor. And to me, you need to self-advocate. You need to ask those questions, and you need to negotiate with your supervisor. Like a contract. I will finish my chapter at this time. When will you get the feedback back to me? You have to discuss these matters with your supervisor, negotiate, and at times, you must stick up for yourself. I recall another instance when I was working with a student, and she said she was really struggling, fourth-year PhD student, because her supervisor was rewriting everything that she had written, and her voice was lost. She felt she was a good writer, but her writing apparently was deemed unsophisticated by her supervisor. And sophistication meant throw in the biggest words possible. Again, she didn't think that was her voice. She needed to advocate for herself. The supervisor meant well. However, she was losing the passion in her work. So find joy in your work. And I would find pockets of resistance. So inject your voice into your writing. Don't allow others to mandate how you're going to write at all times. Maybe use some analogies, maybe use some of your personal experiences and integrate that with scholarship in your writing, and you'll find the process more joyful.
Thank you, Paul. Let's segue back, Margaret, into what you were talking about. We'll get to the supervisor question. So functionally, how can one, this is an interesting question, how can one select the right supervisor? And second part of the question, can you switch supervisors if things aren't working out?
Yeah, I think those are really important questions, and the first one is probably the more important because it makes it less likely that you'll get to the second part, which ideally is where you want to be. Like the graduate student supervisor relationship is a really important one, and it's a really odd one in many ways. It can be a phenomenally good relationship, and if it goes bad, it can be a tremendously bad relationship. And sometimes even when it's good, it's kind of bad, which is where it gets complicated. So I was thinking of that example. I had a student recently who had this terrible, and he's an awesome student. We had a terrific relationship as far as I was aware on every level. We're still in touch, we still get on really well. But when he had a problem, he wouldn't come to me because he wanted to solve it himself. And so he would come and say, I've been grappling with this for 3 weeks, and I can't figure it out. And we would sit down, and 10 minutes later, he'd go, okay, I got it. And he'd go off. And I'd go, why didn't you do that 3 weeks ago? And you're like, I don't know. And he'd do it again and again and again, right? So even when you have a good relationship with your supervisor, you're always navigating that kind of barrier that you always want to impress them. And so there's always a kind of or often at least, a kind of a tension in that relationship, even when it's good. So when it's bad, that's obviously much worse. So when you get into that relationship, you kind of want to think about it beforehand. Your usual concern with a supervisor is, are they the best person in my field, right? Do they do what I want to do? Do they know about what I want to do? Are we passionate about the same things? You want to work with the best scholar. And that is really, really important. But it's also worth thinking about the person, because the person is what you will be engaging with as well as the knowledge. And you want to think about the kinds of things that Paul was talking about. How will you get on with them? How comfortable will you be with them? If you're the kind of person who likes a lot of feedback and likes it quickly, will they give you that? If you're the kind of person who likes to be left alone to get on with things and you'll kind of come back when you need help, will they leave you alone to do that, or will they be looking over your shoulder? There are all sorts of questions about this kind of personal relationship, because especially if you're a PhD student, it will be a personal relationship, it will be a lengthy relationship, and it will be an important academic relationship. So as you're signing up for a supervisor, think about all of these things. Paul mentioned a contract, and in some parts of the university, this is a fairly normal thing to have between supervisors and students, this idea of having a contract. And sometimes it's around very practical things like intellectual property, if you're going to be co-authoring those kinds of questions. But it can also talk about things like, when I hand in work to you, how long will it be before you give it back to me? So that you know when is an appropriate time to start saying, have you read my chapter yet? What do you think about it? So that you're not left on tenterhooks for weeks or months waiting for feedback. Even if you're in a part of the university that doesn't have contracts, it's worth talking to a potential supervisor about things like that. How long does it take you to give feedback? Are you okay if I remind you? Are you willing to read drafts? How many drafts do you want to read? Ask sort of work-a-day questions about how you will get on with each other. And that will give both of you a sense of, is this going to be a good relationship? Are we going to work well together? Are we going to move things forward together? And when you go into a supervisory relationship with that kind of knowledge and that kind of thought, you're a lot less likely to have to face the question of, well, should I change supervisors later? Because it is possible to do that. There's no question that if a supervisory relationship is not working, it's better to get out of it. But it can feel hard to get out of it. It can be an added stressor. So I would say really put time and thought and care into choosing a supervisor rather than changing a supervisor.
Excellent. Thank you, Margaret. We've got about 5 more minutes here, and I think we can get in a couple more questions. Ryan, I'll put this question to you. What is the hardest part, in your opinion, about being a graduate student?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think it's been reflected here a lot today. I think it is, how is it as a grad student you find the right balance for you? With all the different hats you wear, managing, initially some of those imposter feelings that might arise, and then managing the workload, being a TA, all the writing, potentially having to present at a conference might be something you haven't done before. All the new things that will happen as a graduate student. Those can be some of the challenges in terms of striking that right balance. That's
Excellent.
likely.
Thank you. And I'm going to counterpoint this. I'm going to go a bit off script here. Gina, I'm going to ask you, what's the best thing about being a Western graduate student?
That's a tricky question, too.
There's so many. Right?
There's so
We can talk
many.
about
The best thing about being a grad student here at Western, I think just the sense of support that we have on this campus, this is just talking like personally. Our department is great. We have great support administrative staff. I work very well with my supervisor, fortunately. I know that through my experience with SOGS, we've built the sense of community. I get to talk to a lot of other graduate students. We've been collaborating with other partners on campus, including Student Experience and SGPS, and I'm very fortunate for this experience. So yeah, just being able to have all these opportunities to explore and get engaged.
Excellent. Thank you, Gina. We'll end with, I think, a critical question that I'll put to Margaret. All of you are embarking on this journey, whether a master's student or a doctor's student. Margaret, what are some suggestions to help me complete my program on time. What should everybody be thinking of now, and what kind of action should they be taking now to ensure that they can get through their 2 or 4 years?
I think a lot of the advice that we've already given will help you in that general direction. The specifics of your programs are going to vary. I actually want to come back to the last question, because I think that sort of pregnant pause about what's the best thing about being a graduate student was quite telling. There was a really quick answer to what's the hardest thing, and there was a when it comes to what's the best thing. One of the oddest things about academic culture is we're terribly good at complaining, and we're terribly good at focusing on the negative. And I think actually the answer to the best way to get through on time is to focus on the positive. This is a fabulous place to be. You are here because you're excited about your work, you're excited about your research, you've got wonderful supervisors, you've got wonderful classmates and lab mates and office mates. You're going to be teaching some wonderful students who are going to be excited to be here too. You're going to have the opportunity to make an impact in their lives on a day-to-day basis. You're going to have the opportunity to make an impact on your field. You're going to develop enormously as people and as academics and as friends over the next 4 years. This is just a wonderful moment in your life. There is no question that there will be challenges and there will be obstacles and there will be days that don't go so well, but overall you are embarking on an awesome journey. And if you follow the advice, if you eat, if you sleep, if you exercise, if you ask questions, if you engage with the people in your department, in the university, in the city, you can get done absolutely on time, absolutely happy, and when you cross that stage, your family will be sitting right where you are now cheering for you. That is the best thing about being a graduate student here.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, everybody, we'll wrap things up now and move into our next section of the orientation. So if we could have a round of applause for Ron, Margaret, Paul, Ryan, and Gina. Thank you all. So I will be back here at 1 o'clock, and we'll do another hour with a different panel, different series of questions. So up next, we'll move into our next section, and I can introduce him now. So I want to just introduce the president of PSAC 610, Ari Van Geest, to talk to you about the student union.
All right, these mics are on? Okay. Make sure I got my timer going. So I know when I'm... You don't have to go. No need to leave. You ready? All right, so yeah, as said, my name's Ari Van Geest. I'm the president of PSAC 610, the TA and postdoc union here at Western. Just a show of hands real quick, how many of you have ever been a part of a union before? Okay, so there's a few people who've been part of a union. So some of you, this might be a repetition. Maybe you've heard the presentation already, so I'll skip through some of those things rather quickly. But yeah, I'm just here to talk real quick about some of the union basics. So time is valuable. When you were an undergrad, it was all about education and learning, and maybe you had a part-time job. But now your work, your TA-ship, it's your work. You're in a learning environment, and you are a worker. So unions organize, they represent, and they negotiate working conditions. So for example, we come up with a collective agreement. A collective agreement is a legally binding document between you and the university. In the collective agreement, you'll have a number of different things, such as duties, your duty specification agreement, your benefits, all those sorts of things are in there. I encourage you to come and pick one up at the booth after, and we can talk a little bit more about it. But at the very basic, it's the collective agreement that holds the law of your employment. The collective agreement, is anybody here for more than 1 year? Show of hands again. Okay, so this is really important for those of you who are going to be here longer than 1 year, but I also want to stress that it's important for you who are going to be here for one. I myself, I'm going to be finished at the end of the year, but it's always really important to remember about the people coming after you. So when I'm finished, I want to know that the people who are coming in this year, they're going to be in a good shape over the next 4 years of their studies as well. So the collective agreement expires in August 2020. The collective agreement covers things such as overtime pay. It covers TA appointments, benefits, personal leave. So I want to stress this really, really strongly right now. And I want everybody to listen because this is very, very important. 140 hours is the maximum that you're going to work this semester. You can work less than that, but do not work over 140 hours unless you have a signed overtime request form that has gone through the department. You need to have that proper documentation because 140 hours is by law what a graduate student is supposed to be working as a TA. In order to track your hours, I encourage every single person, the second you're done doing something, you come back from your class, you finish grading, mark down on your form how long you worked. We have forms at the booth. We also have forms online that you can get in order to track that. So your duty specification agreement, you'll be getting one of these in the next couple of weeks. This basically outlines what it is that you are responsible for in your TA job. These are things such as mine has 70 hours of grading. It has 20 hours of proctoring, 20 hours of some other stuff, but it should equal out to be 140. If it's more than that, then you need to talk to your supervisor because that's against the collective agreement. One of the most important things too that the union deals with is grievances. So grievances are a dispute between you and the university or you and your supervisor that you can't seem to solve. So for instance, I had a member, there's been members who were asked to babysit for their supervisor's kids. That's not a part of the duty specification agreement. So if you can't solve it through an informal conversation with you, and always bring a union representative along when you're talking about disagreements. And then if that doesn't happen, we enter a process that's called the grievance process. And those are what your department stewards will work with you to work through and stuff like that. Grievances also are legally protected. If you do file anything with the union, such as a grievance, the university can't do anything to harm you. So if you're a master's student and something goes on and you are hoping to apply for a PhD, know that legally the university can't come after you for exercising your rights as a unionized member. So also you'll see when your paycheck comes out that union dues are taken out. Union dues are a small percentage of your wages. If you want to know a bit more about the history, it's in 1945, Ivan Rand, who, for those of you in law school, he formed the law school here at Western. Ivan Rand decided in a groundbreaking case that every single person in a unionized workspace has to pay union dues to the union, whether they want to be a member or not. And that's simply because if you are a member of a unionized space, you have benefits that are coming from the union that you otherwise wouldn't have. So everybody benefits from having a union in the workplace, and so everybody pays a little bit into that to keep the upkeep of the union. For those of you who are looking for benefits, I don't know if you've heard about SOG's benefits too much, but the union has additional benefits such as the Employee Assistance Plan. The Employee Assistance Plan is for short-term mental health coverage. So if something's going on in the next couple of weeks or at any point while you're employed by the university, you can access this program and see a therapist or talk online with a therapist, and they can either work with you for a couple of weeks, or if you need to see a specialist, they'll refer you to a specialist. Specialists aren't covered underneath the Employee Assistance Plan, which is why we have the Mental Health Fund. The Mental Health Fund is $50,000 a year that we won in the last round of bargaining. That fund, you can access up to $500 of that fund, and it helps you see a specialist. It helps you a little bit through that process. In addition, a number of you probably haven't, well, we haven't been paid yet. We'll be getting paid at the end of the month. But in the meantime, if you are struggling, or at any time if you're struggling, we have a food and support bursary. So we get you can apply today if you want to bring your form down to the union, and we'll get you $75 if you qualify for it. Which, if you're a single income earner or a double income earner and you're both students, it's rather easy to get. It's $75 per member of the union, and $25 for dependents in your family. We also have things such as travel subsidies, so SOGS will cover some of it. We like to top it up a little bit more, as well as childcare subsidies. And for those of you, how many of you are international students? This is a really important one for you to pay attention to watch your emails at the end of the school year. Around April or May, we'll be sending out the UHIP assistance plan, the fund. And this is just a fund that's evenly distributed to all international students that apply, and it helps you cover your UHIP costs. There's a number of ways to get involved in the union. One of the most important is that we need departmental stewards. So every department gets stewards, and these are your direct line to the union. They're people who will throw events. For instance, we have a solidarity event that each union steward should be throwing, which gives $20 to take each person, or it gives each person in attendance $20 to come to the event. So a lot of times those are hosted at the grad club. And it's a really good way to learn more about the union, but also it's a really good way to bond with people in your department. We also have committees. So those of you involved that are really passionate about social justice might want to join the Social Justice Committee. They organize events in the community. So for instance, we packed backpacks for people in local elementary schools that couldn't afford it. We have thrown rallies in the community to show support for other unions or other groups of people that are struggling. It's a really good way to get involved in the community as well as in the union. But if being the public face isn't really your thing, you can also apply for things such as the Financial Support Committee or the Bylaws Committee. Bylaws are really important because they are what govern me as the president. It's your way of saying, hey, you're doing a good job, or no, you should be doing this, and it's a way to change those sorts of things. We also have a women's committee. That's one of our real passions this year, is only one of our 11 members on our executive is a woman. All the rest are men. And only one woman actually ran for an executive position. And one thing that we're really trying to do is to understand why. We want to engage with have a more diversified union, and we want to start reaching out to more people to try to get more people involved, because it really shouldn't be just men that are making the decisions, especially at a university where the majority of graduate students are female. So those are just a bit of our communities. One thing, stay informed about your rights. The collective agreement has your rights. The labor board has a set of rights that have to be followed. Things such as anti-harassment, wage equality, those sorts of things are all in there. Know your rights, exercise your rights, because they're really, really important. If you don't exercise your rights, you'll be trampled by employers. Some of our contact information is here. I encourage you all pull out your cell phones right now and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. These are, besides your email, these are your direct line of contact with us, sort of, for events especially. For example, I just came from a picket with UOFA, who is the union representing faculty and librarians here at Western. And if it's a last-minute event, those are sorts of ways we'll throw out on Twitter and Facebook. To follow up on that, one thing too that's really, really important about a union is solidarity. So this year our postdocs are going into bargaining, and TAs will be going into bargaining at the end of the year, but it's not just us. The Society of Graduate Students, who are going to be up in a second to talk, they're a really important aspect of the university. So while we're the arm that defends you when it comes time to working disputes and things to do with your job, SOGS comes in when it comes to do things with your academics, because that's not within our realm of expertise or our right to defend for you. So SOGS needs your support just as much, which is why I really encourage you not to opt out of student fees, and don't opt out of the Canadian Federation of Student Fees either, because they're a huge advocate for you as a student, and they're a huge advocate for us as a union. They're fighting for things such as free education, such as anti-racism initiatives, clean water for everybody in the province. These are really important things for us all to get behind, especially as a union, to live in solidarity with those groups. So I encourage you to stay informed, stay in touch, and back those organizations that have our back, and you never know when you're going to need it. And it's in those moments where you really wish that you had a union or the Society of Graduate Students. We don't want to have to help all the time. Like, we don't want to have issues in the workplace, but it's a reality that happens. And so it's almost like an insurance policy. Hey, you give a little bit in the hopes that you never have to use it, but when you do, we're there to have your back. So with that, I don't want to keep much more of your time. I know I could talk for days about these sorts of things, but I'll give it over to SOGS because they have a great message to give to you. Enjoy your piece, enjoy your day. If you have any questions, come and see me at the booth behind, or just come because we like to talk about these things and we want to get to know you and be informed with all of you. So thank you.
Hello again, all my friends. Have we had all of our questions answered? Not yet, I bet. So what we're going to do now, we're going to have additional information from Gina, who you've met, and then afterwards, we've actually ordered pizza for everyone to enjoy at the lunch break. While you go through the resource fair behind me, you've seen them setting up a little bit as we've been doing our presentations. So I want to make sure that you know for lunch, we've got you covered so that you can focus on getting the rest of your answers to those important questions from our resource fair. And we'll also be convening again at 1 o'clock with a new panel with some of our new advisors and service providers. So now I'd like to turn the microphone back over to Gina Coombe, who is the president of SOGS.
So hello, everybody. It's me again. I am the president of Society of Graduate Students, and I'm here to introduce you to SOGS. But before I do, again, I would like to really congratulate all of you for starting your grad programs here at Western. So a little bit about SOGS. SOGS is a graduate student-run organization whose aim is to provide support for and advocate on behalf of graduate students here at Western. We are your grad student government, and our office is located in Middlesex College, ground floor in room 8. And here is just a sneak preview of what our office looks like. So SOGS is also the driving force behind grad student life. We offer benefits and services, including the SOGS Health and Dental Plan, the London Bus Pass, and other forms of social networks such as the Graduate Peer Support, and we have our drop-in sessions this year on Tuesdays and Thursdays between the hours of 5 to 7 p.m. We also offer financial assistance and scholarships, professional development and wellness funding, as well as social and academic programming. Just remember that we are the graduate student voice on this campus, locally, provincially, and nationally. And really, our SOGS space is a safe space for all graduate student members, and it should be your go-to if you have any questions regarding graduate student life. So really, in short, we're awesome. I also want to take this time to introduce you to the rest of the SOGS executive team. So apart from myself, we have 4 other VPs, Joyla, Wissam, Madison, and Jeremy. We will all be attending the resource fair that will be happening shortly, so come and say hello. SOGS, also owns and operates the Grad Club. For those of you that may be unfamiliar with the Grad Club, it's the campus eatery, pub, and graduate student space, also known as Home Away from Home. Come to Middlesex College to experience our value breakfast, our daily lunch and dinner specials. We also have vegetarian options. Just a show of hands, how many of you have done your undergrad studies here at Western? How many of you have had bagels from the Spoke? If you love bagels from the Spoke, you'll love ours too, because we sell the same ones. We also have weekly events. I've mentioned Tuesday Trivia Night, but on Thursdays, we also have Rick McGee Nights. So again, come out to the Grad Club and have a good time. So if you're into social media, follow the Grad Club on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And now I want to take the time to introduce you to our SOGS Orientation Week happening all of next week from September 9th to the 13th. We have awesome events lined up, including the family barbecue on Monday. We have a drop-in breakfast and meet and greet of some of the SOGS non-executive officers. We also have Amazing Race on Thursday, bonfire night, and on Friday we have the Indigenous Graduate Student Breakfast and Karaoke night. The blank in the middle was to introduce the Welcome to Your Grad Club event. It's on Wednesday, September 11th, between the hours of 4 to 7 p.m. We're also going to be having different partners attend this event, so please mark your calendars. The president of the university, Professor Alan Shepard, will also be attending, so it's a great way to meet other people and be introduced to administration and other resources on this campus. So if you have any comments or questions, or if you just want to be involved with SOGS, come check us out. We're again located in Middlesex College, room 8, or you can email sogs@uwo.ca. You can also follow SOGS on Facebook and Twitter. And lastly, I hope to meet many of you during next week's SOGS orientation and throughout the new academic year. Enjoy the rest of orientation day, and again, congratulations on starting your graduate school here. Best of luck on your Grad Life Western U journey. You've got this.
All right, my wonderful friends in graduate studies. We now will break for lunch, always a highlight of any student activity. I also want to bring to your attention, we'll be running slides during the lunch break that highlight a lot of these really fantastic SOGS events that are coming up this semester. So, without further ado, bear with us as we distribute the pizza and take a moment to speak to your colleagues in the resource fair. Thank you, and we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you.